This is Lola's roadmap to success. Now, Lola is a pretty medium energy dog. She really has a great energy. I think that the big problems here, I think, were just simply a matter of miscommunication and misunderstanding of where her position is. See, right now she's pawing at me. Now I have a handful of treats, but she's used to demanding and telling her guardian what to do. And I think because she was able to climb up on top of her guardian's lap when she wanted, or nudge her for attention, she didn't think that she was equal with her guardian, which is a problem with a lot of my clients where they think listening is optional. I think she thought she was responsible for her guardian. And so as a result, she is more reactive to dogs on walks. And also when she has certain things, if somebody that comes in that she perceives having less authority than her, tries to take away the pair of socks or whatever that she's chewing on, she gets a little bit frustrated with them. So I don't think it's a case of resource guarding. I could be wrong, but I'm thinking that this is more of a situation where she just was thinking that her job was to be in charge of security when it really wasn't. So what we're going to do is essentially demote her, and the best way that I like to do this is simply by incorporating rules, boundaries, structure, and limits, and consistently enforcing them with good timing. By good timing, I mean we want to correct or reward the dog within 3 seconds maximum. A third of a second should be your goal, which is very quick. The faster you deliver that treat or disagree, the easier it is for the dog to understand and appreciate where you're coming from. Now, when it comes to things we don't want the dog to do, I like to preferably disagree with the dog before it gets in the habit of doing it. One of the things I mentioned in the guardian is good attention from the human and bad attention are almost the same thing. And so it's validating to get yelled at just as much as it is rewarding to get patted behind the ear. So I see a lot of dogs that actually their guardians train them to be mischievous because that's when they give the dog the attention. The rest of the time you're raising your kids or doing your own thing, but as soon as the dog does something you want, then suddenly you're paying attention to them. Those dogs sometimes get more mischievous because that's how they get your attention. So one of the things we went over, before we get to that, make sure that you're enforcing rules consistently. So one of the rules we talked about is no furniture. We went over how to train the dog to go to the dog bed on command. The bed itself should be with permission only, and so the guardian should get dressed, ready for bed, get in bed, get comfortable when she's ready, and then she invites the dog up afterwards. I'd also like her to have the dog practice some nights sleeping outside of the bed, the human's bed. This way, the dog, if we do have somebody that spends the night, then the dog is used to it. That's not, I'm getting kicked off the bed because somebody spent the night. It's sometimes this is one of those nights that I sleep on the floor. We don't want to let the dog within 7 feet of anyone who's eating. So I said we should imagine that there's a line that goes here, basically a big box that goes around this table, and maybe about 5 feet out here, and just the dog is not allowed in that box when somebody's eating something at this table. The rest of the time, the dog can come on the box whenever they want, but when the person's eating, that would be inappropriate. Speaking of eating, I'd like the guardian to get in the habit of feeding the dog after she eats herself. So if you're going out to eat, just eat a chip or a cracker in 5 or more bites. Can't be a smoothie or coffee. They don't understand that it has to be a solid food item. And don't fake it because they'll know the difference. And then once you get done eating, or if you're going to eat your actual meal, I like to do it where there's food in the dog's bowl, but the dog is not allowed to eat it until I get permission to eat. Delaying gratification, like we talked about during parts of the session, is really great because it helps the dog develop more self-control. Food is a really important activity for dogs, but playing fetch, you have to sit before I throw the ball. You have to sit at the door before I let you go out, things along those lines. Okay, so because a lot of people chastise or correct their dog for doing the wrong thing, they train their dog to be mischievous. A great way to do the opposite of that is to do what I like to call petting with a purpose. So the next time that Lola scratches or nudges for attention, instead of actually, we'll see if we do a little bit here. So she smells that I have them. She's just trying to take with her tongue. See if we can get a scratch. Well, what I do is when the dog, there we go, scratch. So I'd say sit, up. Up is hard. Yes, I know. Whenever I use a treat to lure, I say with him, sit. I would say up, I'm sorry. If you pull the treat away really far, the dog thinks you're taking the treat away. So when you use a treat to lure the dog, see how she stopped? So what I do is go like this, and keeping it within an inch of her nose, that makes it more interesting, more closer proximity means that she's probably going to get it. So when she scratches at the guardian or tells her what to do, the guardian's going to give her a counter order, tell her to sit. As soon as she sits, we're going to reach over and pet her under the chin if possible and say the word sit. Just sit, no other words. Not good dog, not good girl, not Lola sit, just sit. After a while, what will happen is Lola's going to come start sitting in front of the guardian and saying, I'm petting. There we go. Sit. Sit. So when you tell me what to do, nothing happens. When I tell you to do something and you do it, you're rewarded. After a while, the dog will come up and sit in front of humans and say, I'm prepaying for some attention. Can you hook me up? And we want to do that as much as we can. Now, let's say you just want to pet the dog just because you feel like petting her. Still ask her to sit. The more you do this, if you get in the habit of doing it, every time you do it, it's a micro obedience training session that you do without even trying to do it, without spending any time and effort at it. And every time you do it, it helps the dog respect you a little bit more as an authority figure. Are you going to do a high five? High five? There we go. High five. So for petting with a person can be anything the dog knows how to do on command. That leads me to something I like to call passive training. Anything your dog does on its own, we can train it to do on command. So right now she's scratching at me to get it. This is actually how you can train your dog to wipe its feet on the ground. You put some treats underneath the towel. Right by the edge of the towel, the dog scratches at the towel to get access to the treats, and you assign a command word for it. Google it, there's a little bit more to it. But then you get the dog doing the work for you. So if every time the dog comes to you, you pet it and say, come, then those times you call it to come, it's much more inclined to come because it has a good remembrance of something positive happening every time I come to the human. And this is a great way of dog training because we're just waiting for the end result, rewarding it. And after a while, then when we ask the dog to do the thing before the end result, they're more than happy to do so. Petting with a purpose and passive training are the two easiest things that you can do that will have the biggest impact on your dog's behavior. I'd also like the guardian to use the escalating consequences that we went over. So first thing is we hiss, second thing is stand up and turn to face the dog until it's stationary, then we take those 2 steps backwards. Third thing we do is we march directly at the dog. She's very determined. We march with the dog until the dog turns sideways. And as soon as the dog turns sideways, we stop, then we keep our feet together, pivot until the dog's stationary, then we take those 2 steps back. Now, make sure when you march at the dog, don't stop, but move very briskly at the dog. The dog needs to think, if I'm still here, when the human gets here, she's running me over. The fourth consequence, and then we wouldn't apply that if she's in the designated no dog zone and she turns sideways, we would ignore that and keep marching at her until she crossed the line. That's how we establish a boundary. And then the last consequence is the leash timeout. Putting her on a leash, stepping on a leash, about a foot away, in her case, about 1.5 feet away from where it attached to the leash. As soon as she sits, we slide the leash towards her, but we do not tell her to sit. And we don't pet her for that, we just slide the leash to take the tension off. As soon as she lays down on her own, again, unprompted, then we take her, and she's calm, we take her foot off the leash. And at that point, she can get up and walk away, drag the leash. Don't tell her to leave, wait for her to figure it out on her own. If she misbehaves again within a minute or two, we just step on the leash and we apply the consequence. Or if a couple minutes go by and she's good, we take the leash off, and now it's not a quid pro quo. What we're saying is if you're going to be defiant, because we warned you, we told you no, we told you no, we told you no, now you have the leash consequence. What we're saying is if you're defiant, you're going to lose all freedom. It's not returned until you're completely calm and balanced. Most people confuse happy for being excited. A dog can be happy and calm and be excited and not happy. Now, frequently they are happy and excited at the same time because we make them that way. Who's the best dog in the world? Oh my God, you're the best! You see the energy, the higher pitch and the faster, and that delivery creates excitement for the dog. Most dogs don't have any need of or help in terms of getting excited. So when we come home, we're like, oh my God, I'm so happy to see you. You're so, oh my God, I was missing you. We don't do this for anybody else, but we do it for our dog. Don't do it for your dog. Let your dog be nice and calm and balanced, and you're going to find it's much easier for it to listen to you. Now, we went through a focus exercise, which the guardian actually been practicing from watching one of my videos, but she missed a couple components. So I think that technique alone combined, well, not alone, but that technique combined with consistently enforcing rules and boundaries and adding the structure is going to help the dog adopt more of a follower's mindset and not think that it is her job to protect her guardian from whatever it is. But remember, when we get the furniture, if we're we're staying the night somewhere that we normally spend the night at, and somebody comes in the room, the dog growls, the dog has to immediately get off the furniture. Now be careful you don't push the dog towards the person, because that might be like saying, go get him! And that's not what we want. Remember, when we do ask the dog to get off the furniture, always end it with chill. Always end it with a positive. So if I push the dog to the edge of the couch, it feels like it's going to fall off, it jumps off on its own, immediately reach over and pet it and say, sit, or excuse me, say off. If you don't have something like that where it's appropriate, then just ask the dog to sit or lie down and then reward it for doing that. I always like to end things with positivity. Let's see, what else? The guardian needs to make sure that she keeps the dog next to her when we're approaching other dogs on a walk. The more in front she is, the more that she thinks she's the leader. I'm probably leaving out some other stuff, but like I said, she's a really well-behaved dog. Any guy that doesn't like her doesn't deserve her guardian, because she's got a nice energy, and I think she genuinely does want to please. So if the guardian has any questions, she can always go to, give me a shout. That's something I'm always available to my clients. And also, if you're watching this at home and you don't have access to me, if you go to doggoneproblems.com and the dog training tips section of the page, there's a little search box. It's actually for you, it'll be over here. And you can type in door exercise, escalating consequences, drop it, or any of those commands, and I'll have a bunch of videos I've shared with my clients. You can watch me helping other people. One last thing I forgot to go over is drop it. I think I talked about it a little bit in the other video, but make sure you practice that a lot with low value items. That way, when the dog thinks that a human asked me to drop something, I'm happy to drop it because they're going to give me something. Just make sure if you're going to take it away, you give her a bully stick or something better. Now, for your dad or anybody else that's trying to take something from her when she's in that mood, I don't want to give it up. One of the things they can do is if she's got something, you could get like an old pair of socks or an old piece of underwear or something like that that is not that important if she ruins. We don't care. When she has that, what dad should do is walk by and toss a treat towards her, but not get close to her. But toss it like a foot away. So she has to get up to go get it. And so what we're teaching her, and this is really a microcosm of how I fix dogs that have resource guarding problems, is we want the dog to think that when the human or the dog approaches you, they're not taking your stuff, they're actually making your stuff better. So when dad walks by and sees that she's got some underwear and he tosses a treat like a foot in front of her and then dad walks away, she usually will drop the underwear, take a step forward, get the treat, and then probably will go back to the underwear. But if dad does that enough times, and that's why if we use an old pair of underwear, we don't care, and then eventually dad can get a little bit closer from his toss, a little bit closer. Eventually he can walk over and hold his hand out with the treat. The dog will take the treat out of his hand. And eventually when he gets to that point, then he can take one treat out of the hand, he can take another one, toss it like a foot away when the dog walks away. Then he can pick up the item that we don't want the dog to have. Now again, if we take it, don't snatch it, because that makes the dog protected. And if he does snatch it, he should take away, immediately pull a bully stick out of his pocket and then give it to the dog. So again, the human's going to make your stuff better, and in those rare times where they do take it away, they give you something even better to chew on. All right, well that is Lola's roadmap to success. Remember, everything you do trains your dog, only sometimes you mean it.